we have this concerning the loads, because the AI units are mostly more heavy. But you also have different changes in cooling system. The aisles are different, and the cold corridors are different. And for us as a company, it's then very important to have different kind of products, different lifting equipment, but also logistic equipment to move around the servers, the batteries, the UPS, all these kind of materials. Yeah, hello, I'm Pierre Ellow from Pronomic, and you are on Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Good afternoon, good morning. Perhaps for some of you, it's even good evening. I'm Joshua Feinberg, host of the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast, and I'm thrilled, very, very excited to have a special guest joining me today. I'm welcoming Pierre Ellow, who is the European Business Development Manager of Pronomic, headquartered out of Sweden near Stockholm. Pierre, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joshua. It's nice to be here.
Likewise. I think what would be super helpful is if you could start by walking me through how you ended up in this place in your career leading business development for a company focusing on the equipment side, on the ergonomic side of the data center industry. Was it something that you had always planned on? Is it a space that you've been at through most of your career, or were there certain steps or progressions that led you to this place?
Oh, my career is rather long to start with, but I think that this, when we say data center now, we are working into material handling, and I have a rather long experience in the material handling. I've worked with that for nearly 40 years in different companies. So how I went up to the data center was mostly based on the strategical decision from our management that we had an opportunity to go into this market, which is a little bit special when the equipment to lift servers and batteries. So I have, of course, with that experience, I know a lot of different kind of way of manipulating materials, from big machines, from robots to manual lifting system. And it's by accident, I would say. It was not what I was aiming in the beginning of my career. It was mostly by occasion, possibilities, and then I've traveled around in Sweden, Germany, in France, and worked with different companies in Europe.
So what's super interesting about this is a lot of times people are approaching this kind of role from the standpoint of providing outsourced data center services, or they're a technology company, or they're focused on something facility related or construction or real estate. Your category, what Pronomic does, is kind of like at the intersection of technology and facilities. So the stakeholders certainly are a little different, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's handling materials. And just when you think that the needs can't get any heavier than servers, batteries significantly heavier and probably significantly even more challenging moving around a data center than just pure server hardware. So yeah, really, really interesting to see how you've approached this. Given all of that, for someone that is relatively new to exploring career options, maybe they're a teen or in their early 20s, they're contemplating what to do with going to university. They've heard about digital infrastructure and technology companies. They've certainly been in the news a lot more in the last year or two than they have in the previous decade or two. And perhaps it's a niece or a nephew or younger cousin or the son or daughter of a neighbor or coworker, and they approach you and they ask for advice. Pierre, we've heard what you've done with the great work that you've done over at Pronomic, and we're really curious. We don't think we want a highly technical career. Engineering and software development doesn't appeal to us. We're thinking of something more client facing. What do you think the opportunities look like for someone that's just getting into this kind of role in some aspect of supporting technology companies?
First of all, I have to admit that when we're talking material handling, it seems for a lot of people as something very easy. We take a load, we lift it up, we use some kind of media, electricity, air, whatever to lift it. It seems very easy. But with this experience, I will even say it's more complicated than it seems to. Solutions are often very specific. We have always technicians with us to help us with the final technical solution, but it's very important to understand, first of all, the needs from the clients, but also to know the real possibility of your product, and also to have a very good technical knowledge. We've seen that in different kind of segments, even now more into the data center, because even in the data center, it seems very easy to take a server of 40, 50 kilos. But what we forgot is we have to be easy, smoothly using product, a product which could be very, I would say, dealing with a lot of problems, heating, humidity sometimes also, but also everything with the dimensions. We need to be small, to be rather light, and to lift very high. So we use different technologies. We're using different type of products to also transfer the batteries from the lifter into the racking, the servers. So it's not only to lift. We have to understand very quickly what is the pain points from the client, which is the problems, and how can we help him. So going from a very simple question, it's not always so simple to do it. Often we have this, I would say, good products which help us to find good solutions, but you have to have a good technical knowledge and base, and to understand the needs from the clients. So it seems easy. It's not always easy. We have to, I would say, be making new products constantly to really reply on the needs from the clients, and also to have a large product range so we can satisfy all these kind of needs, because it's not only the battery and the server, it could even be other things into the data center.
So it sounds like there's a couple of interesting non-intuitive elements about those. One is, it seems like even at a fairly early stage in a fairly entry-level role, there's a need to truly consult with the client on this particular aspect of material handling, because it sounds a lot like the client needs your help to figure out how to actually solve this problem. It's not as simple as them going to an e-commerce website and just ordering a solution to figure all of this out. There's a certain, sounds like a diagnostic element to this, where you're going out and doing site visits and speaking with clients. So yeah, that's really, really interesting, because that's one of the best ways going forward for sales professionals, business development professionals to thrive in this world where so many buyers are running a self-driven buyer's journey, where they're just doing tons of research before they get to you. So the opportunity to show up as an expert, as a consultant, as a teacher, for sure seems to be something that should resonate with a lot in the space. So with that in mind, who are the typical kinds of stakeholders that you're usually working most closely with at data center operators and in enterprise data centers? Is it on the IT side? Is it the facilities side? Is there, in certain data centers, you find people that are focused just on materials handling?
We are working with different kinds in the different stage of the data center. Sometimes we work only to replace equipment, and in that case, it's often, if it's in the data center co-location, for instance, it could be the infrastructure manager. It could also be somebody responsible to exchange a lifter from another. That's the most standardized sales, I would say. There we can often propose standard products with some adaptation, because the height is not the same, etc. But sometimes we also are into project from the beginning, and there we are not perhaps with the architects from the beginning, but we are rather close to, I would say, the end of the delivery of the building, because there we can deliver new lifters, and we also have products for logistics, which means that crash carts and togs, etc., which could also be used to transport the racking system. So it's depend a little bit. And then we also have this category of client, which is companies on sites, banking, assurance company. There we are more to general, I would say, equipment department. And there we are mostly into a general, call it purchase procedure. So we also have to adapt ourselves when we're going to see a client. We need to listen a lot. If it's only replacement, a price, delivery time, a load, of course, we can reply to that. But sometimes the questions are more complicated. We need to go in for, I would say, some kind of tenders. We have to adapt the equipment. We have to make some specials. So it's very important for a young person coming into this market. First of all, is to be listening and to I would say take all thing under understanding to understand what is the project, who is of course the decisioner, and what can we bring to them. So it's a global context, different contact person, and also different kind of solutions. And that's also why I also talked about, of course, techniques, but also selling techniques. It's important to also have some kind of structure in the market approach and how to go to the market.
Yeah, you raise a really interesting point as well. As a lot of times people come to me asking for advice on reaching the decision maker, and I usually push back and I ask them, is it really just an individual decision maker anymore? Because what I find with a lot of companies in this space is even if you can get the meeting with the magic person, people have gotten so risk averse that they're almost certainly going to kick it back to their team that works for them to more properly vet and get buy-in and get alignment. So that's certainly a fairly universal challenge that I see in considered purchases in this industry, is helping to support internal champions and get alignment and understanding different kinds of stakeholders. It was really interesting too. You brought up the idea of, is this replacement equipment or is this a brand new facility? So does that bring you into the world of commissioning companies as well?
Yep, of course. And it's also important to make, as you said, the contact person, of course, it's important to know if it's infrastructure, site manager, whatever. But it's also important to know that you need to go from one to another, which means that if I go in the discussions with one person, perhaps he's not the 100%, call it the good contact person. I also had to go later to go further and to find even other persons, because the needs could be different. The site manager, he's worrying about his budget, but perhaps the logistic manager really wants to have something with a return on investment on how to move things. So it's very important not to just knock on the door, try to make it one shot. There are a lot of things to do, but you have to adapt your way of doing things, the products, and also the strategy, of course.
Do you ever get interest coming from the risk management side or the human resources side, where people are concerned about like preventing workplace injuries? Or is it typically more a matter of protecting the equipment that usually is the more predominant opportunity or pain that you're hearing?
It's very good, Joshua, that you took that item, because it's very important. I think that how to say the background that we are working with this area since 6-7 years, and we have already seen a very big difference in approach from purchaser and from seller, that this point about security is more and more important. We know that in general material handling, 60-65%, I think it is, in the accidents are related to manipulating materials. So it's very important to talk about what's happening if you have an accident. Of course, if you're dropping a server, you can evaluate the cost of it, because it's very important. But if you have somebody which are blessed into the activity, first of all, the person could be off work for 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever. But you can also have accidents which are more important, and there you can really have a company problem, social problem. So it's very important to also talk to the security, talk to human resource, because it's important in that phase of accident. But it's also very important as what we call a social aspect of material handling. And now, Joshua, you will say, oh, what's that? No, it's as when you make recruitment of technicians, you have to equip them with a good laptop, to equip them with different material. But it's also the same thing with lifting equipment. If the persons have a light equipment, easy to handle, easy with the maintenance from the supplier, and it's easy to live with this product, that's very important also. Because on the other hand, if you have a heavy equipment, which you have a lot of problem with, you can't use it. And that's important for that the people also stay, that you like, we have to move the servers and batteries in the data center. For the moment, the investments are too important to have the robotized system. So anyway, you need a lifting system. And we believe, and we know that companies also, our clients believe that a good equipment will also satisfy the personnel in the company. So it's very important, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense instinctively that someone that works on a construction crew building a data center has to be able to lift 100 pounds, 60 kilograms, something like that. But you wouldn't think necessarily that someone that's working as a technician or a system engineer, helping to provision and remote hands and stuff, would have to be able to do that. But yeah, as the servers get heavier and even the batteries, like big equipment. And when you think about even diversity in the workplace, which is a huge initiative globally, being able to move equipment safely without someone having a soft tissue injury, having a back injury that takes them out of work for anywhere from weeks to several months and exposes the company to liability. Yeah, big medical bills. Yeah, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense that there's even a different path potentially on the education and the pre-sales consulting and analyzing the needs.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.
When you look at what's going on with how digital infrastructure companies, how data center companies approach this whole category of materials handling, moving equipment from one place in the facility to another, especially as you look at facilities with thousands of servers in a single location and large volume of batteries as well, what do you feel is the biggest challenge that the industry now has to overcome, or the biggest mistake that you see other companies and other parts of the industry and how they look at ergonomics and material handling in a data center?
We have different kind of changes in the market. We have this concerning the loads, because the AI units are mostly more heavy. But you also have different changes in cooling system. We have sometimes differences in the corridor. The ASILs are different. The cold corridors are different. So it's happening a lot of things. And for us as a company, it's then very important to have different kind of products, different lifting equipment, but also logistic equipment to move around the servers, the batteries, the UPS, all these kind of material. And we also work outside the data center into the companies manufacturing the racks and other equipment. So we think it's very important to be, I will not say global, but to have an access on the different integrators, co-location. We work with Hyperscale. We work with suppliers, all kinds of suppliers. And that's very important also to this, I would say, segment. Seems rather, how to say, simple, but it's, as I told you, more and more complicated. And it's also changing a lot due of problem with cooling, electricity. There are new innovations, I will not say daily, but nearly. So the market is changing. The equipment suppliers, of course, have to be more and more. Also, we have also to invite more and more products to adapt for the end user. So it's a very good market. A lot of data center. The data center are making more and more development, but the supplier needs to be more and more, how to say, have to adapt his offer and the way of working. We can't only, as we said, only have one contact person. We have several. We have different way of working to the end user, if it's replacement or it's a global project. So it's multi-dimension work we're doing when we go out for this market.
You raised a really interesting point as well when I think about AI. Not only that AI is increasing the density in a particular rack, the power requirements, it's drastically increasing the financial value of what's in the rack. And in many cases, it's also forcing an issue around cooling. So we see so many more people talking about liquid cooling. Is that something that's impacted Pronomic quite yet, and how people are addressing the material handling aspect of moving servers and batteries around, is having to contend with these ways of cooling that were considered very niche a few years ago, but seem to be going a lot more mainstream now?
Yeah, it's happening a lot. We have equipment also for liquid cooling. It's the same way. We are not just pushing it into a rack. We are lifting it out from a big bath tube, and we have also to deal with liquids. So of course it's different. We have a feeling about that it's more and more, but it's up and down, because sometimes we have a feeling that a lot of co-location companies, Hyperscale, talking about sometimes about the liquid cooling. There are some progress, and we see it more and more, but it doesn't have the same impact or implementation as we thought for 2-3 years ago. But we also see other kind of cooling system, cooling directly into the server, and cooling by the racking system with special backs and doors, ventilated. But there are a lot of different solutions, and there it's very important, as I said earlier, our way of adapting the product is very important, so we can reply for this kind of request. But still, they are happening so much. So we think that the future will be, of course, to use lifters that you can modify after your needs. That's important. But we also perhaps have to be more, more close to the market to really adapt. We have, there are hyperscale data center, which are huge. We're talking 300 megawatt, and you have small edge data center for 4 or 5 megawatts. So the capacity, the dimensions, the investment are really big difference.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how that forces a lot of decisions around materials handling, how to safely, quickly, expeditiously do this the right way without causing any social problems, without causing injuries to the workforce there. And as the density increases, for sure. You brought up an interesting issue as well with the modification. When someone has the devices in place, the equipment in place to help them move the servers and the batteries around, is a company like Pronomic typically involved post-purchase? Are retrofits or upgrades or maintenance typically part of the equation, or is it usually more considered a capital expenditure?
Yes, and that's now we are coming to really the strategy of the company. It's to have, of course, the manufacturing capacity of making different products, but also that we are present with own companies. We are directly on 5 major markets in Europe. We have also companies in the US and in Canada. And we are, by partner, also proposing maintenance in all the different countries in Europe and also in North America, of course. And it's very important to say that our product range is made in a way that you can buy product A today, and then your facilities change, or you're moving, or something happens, something change. We can produce nearly with some options a B lifter, which is a little bit different in height, different in weight, and we can add options. So, and that, I think it's important for the data center in the future. I would say we're just talking 2-3 years. Is this possibilities to change the equipment to adapt it, instead of buying a product that are not used 1 or 2 years later because you can't change it, and then you need to buy a new product. And that's something we're always afraid about in our market. It's always to sell a product that the client doesn't use, because that's a sign of we haven't succeed to sell or well selling the product. And so for us, it's very important to say to a client, okay, you don't use it for some reasons. The platform is not adapted, your options, your height, whatever. But in that case, we will change it so you can use it. And that's really into our strategy: presence, local presence, and possibilities to adapt the product, even for when you have technical problems. Instead of sending the lifters to the factory, we just change the piece. We change a wheel, we change a column, we change a engine, whatever. Everything is changeable, and we can help the client to avoid any breakdown, because that's very important for the data centers, to always have their equipment functional. And there we really have a good strategy, and a very good we can follow our clients during the years and help them for this kind of problem.
Yeah, and the more you explain this, the more the wheels are starting to turn, and I'm realizing just how important it is for you and anyone else on your team to be seen as experts in this space, so they get the infrastructure folks that you're working with at the data centers don't feel like this is a one and done decision where they're just buying a piece of equipment and they're on their own for some time, that there's a strong interest in making sure that it's being used, that it's being used correctly, that as their needs change, that it continues to adapt, and of course that the equipment is maintained so they get the useful life out of that. When you think about where you are right now, Pierre, and how your role might be changing, how the process of running business development for a company like Pronomic may be changing in the next 2, 3, 4 years, do you see much of a difference in how you work with data centers, or do you see that do you anticipate that a lot of what you're doing 2, 3, 4 years from now will look a lot of like what you're doing today?
No, it's also changing. We are talking AI changing with the way, of course, prospect new clients, all new techniques related to AI, ChatGPT or whatever, LinkedIn, and that has changed since, I would say, since the COVID. Since the COVID, a lot of things have changed in the way of going to the market, or going to the market to reach out to the client. We also, of course, always making exhibitions. That's also important to continue with, and I don't think that will change in the in 2-3 years time, we will continue make a lot of exhibitions, because it's really the moment we can meet the client and show the product. But the approach to clients are really changing. We are working on different levels, of course, normal prospection on LinkedIn, emailing, but also by organizations. We are member in different organizations. In the Swedish manufacturing organization for data center, of course, is also to create and to be informed about the changes on the market, but also to have a good relations to the big actors, well, not big always, but the actors on the market. And I think that will also change more and more. And I see it now when I would say, in the end of my professional careers, what the young people can do today, and the knowledge they have about the different tools existing today. We are talking about cold mailings. We are talking different. I'm not the best guy for this. We have a marketing department for that, but I'm a little bit informed that these tools are changing. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've noticed the same thing. If we're having this conversation 10 years ago, Gartner found about half of a typical buyer's journey was over before someone would meet with someone on a sales team. At the time, I think in the mid 2010s, it was about 56% of a typical journey, like researching, comparing options and evaluating pricing before sales contact. Now, 10 years later, it's in well over 80%. Like most of the research and buyer's journeys, that sales cycle is over, because they're just doing so much more research on their own. And for sure, like the couple of years in the early part of the 2020s, when millions, tens of millions of people were working from home, that for sure accelerated transformation and is forcing a lot of changes in how companies go to market and educate and build trust. And of course, there's generational changes as well. If there's tends to be anyone that's digitally resistant nearing towards the end of their career, it's very, very likely that as more Gen X and more millennial and eventually Gen Z are moving into these decision committee roles, that they'll be even more interested in being in the driver's seat with this self-driven journey. So yeah, super interesting that you're seeing so much of this, and should play really, really well in what your need to educate your prospects and future clients really early on about what's truly involved in material handling, way beyond just what some might on a surface level consider a transactional equipment purchase.
Yeah.
So showing up early, showing up and being there as the go-to experts in your space can make an enormous difference. Pierre, this has been super insightful. I'm sure our audience is going to get a tremendous amount of value from learning more about the material handling aspect of the digital infrastructure and data centers, who the typical stakeholders that are involved, the challenges that people often overlook. If someone is curious about learning more about what it is that you're working on, or they want to reach out, is LinkedIn a good place to reach out to you?
Yeah, no problem.
And if they want to learn more about Pronomic, where would be the best place to start?
A website, pronomic.com. It's the most, and we have one part also dedicated to data center, and we have it in different languages, as we have different companies in the group. So to learn about the company's website, or we also have a dedicated LinkedIn, Pronomic DC or data center. There we're also publishing different information regarding the products, but also regarding the market. We would like to also to vehicle some kind of global interest for this data center market. They're happening so much for the moment. I'm mostly talking about the European market. But when we now have these hyperscale companies investing, but we also have a lot of investment from bigger group and bigger companies. So it's happening a lot.
All it takes is a hyperscale company that has a presence in Europe to be thrilled with your products and what you provide, to say, oh, we should also use Pronomic over in the US or use it in Asia. And then all of a sudden, yeah, the global opportunities open up. We're globally connected. So it's super
but we already work with hyperscale, but by our American companies. So we already have clients in that area. But what's happening now is because of course, the close to the market, the energy cost, and we can see now even European companies are now being merged, and it's happening really a lot for the moment, and more will come, I think.
For sure. And that's why, like when you mentioned using LinkedIn a lot more, when you mentioned sending people that are curious to learn about Pronomic about LinkedIn, it's really interesting too that 10 years ago, anyone that would have had pushback would have said, I'm not really into social media. You don't really have to be into social media in general, but it's really come into focus in recent years, how much LinkedIn has become the predominant, well, with over 1 billion users worldwide, it's really become the predominant social media platform that's used for companies in critical facilities, digital infrastructure, data centers for interacting and growing. It's kind of like the 7x24 365 conference that doesn't stop and is great for so many people on so many levels, especially in a business development role. So yeah, this has been really terrific. Pierre, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me on the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast. I've been speaking with Pierre Ellow, who is the European Business Development Manager for Pronomic. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Pierre.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joshua.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.